A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Today's guest menu looks like this. We have a late announcement. The head baseball coach at Southern University, Coach Carrick Jackson, will join me in our number one. Some exciting news. If you're a SWAC baseball fan, a Southern University alum, Southern fan, in pertaining to Coach Jackson, all I'm going to say is he's going to be in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a little bit longer. I hear the crowd behind me cheering, clapping. We'll get into that very shortly. Following Coach Carrick Jackson, it'll be Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network with a SWAC athletic report. And then following Charles Edmond, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. He's doing a series of articles about best running backs in the SWAC and the MEAC, best quarterbacks. We'll pick his brain a little bit and get the reasoning behind his announcements, how he rated everyone in those particular positions. So it's something good to hear about, read about, and we'll hear him on this June 22nd, 2019. Boy, the year is going fast. Can you kind of smell it just a little bit? Football is fast approaching. Let the games begin. Officially after the July 4th, you've got football, fall camps, pro, all kinds of football activities. It'll be interesting to follow it all right here on the Carlos Brown Show. Here's what's trending. Hot topic number one. SWAC announces the 2009 ESPN television football schedule. We'll get a little bit into that, the particulars. We'll give you the rundown on the schedule that was released by the Southwestern Athletic Conference this week. Our thoughts and prayers go up to Grambling State wide receiver Darrell Clark, who was shot in his home city of New Orleans, and his brother tragically killed. We want to encourage the family to keep their hearts open. And once again, you don't understand some things, but in this life, we must show much more love and patience and tolerance. You hear this too often, and I don't like mentioning it, but you have to. And once again, another young life is lost. Speedy recovery to Darrell Clark, Grambling State wide receiver. Once again, encourage the family. Prayers up to the family. And then finally, Coach Carrick Jackson gets a new contract, an extension, to stay at Southern University. Let me get right into, and by the way, if you have a comment or question, a couple of ways to do it. I have the Carlos Brown Show Facebook page is open, Facebook Messenger. Also, if you care to do so, you can call in at area code 936-333-5256. That's area code 936-333-5256. Or if you just care to do so, you can send me an email at thecarlosbrownshow@gmail.com. Well, I've looked at social media. The SWAC television schedule is out August 31st. Prairie View A&M at Texas Southern. That's ESPN3. And a lot of the, across the family of ESPN networks, you'll hear me say ESPN3 quite a bit. 5:30 p.m. live, a tape delay of that game, ESPNU at 9:30. September the 1st, 2 p.m., Bethune-Cookman versus Jackson State. That's live, ESPN2, SWAC MEAC Challenge. Prairie View A&M at Alcorn State, September 21st. Time, 5 p.m. ESPN 3. 5 p.m. live. ESPNU. Tape delay at 9:30. September 28th, 6 p.m. Southern University at Arkansas Pine Bluff. Skelton goes home. Should be pumped. Should be fired up. ESPN 3. 6 p.m. live. On October the 5th, Grambling State University at Jackson State, ESPN 3, 6 p.m. live. The 12th of October, as we move through the month of October, Prairie View A&M at Southern, ESPN 3, 6 p.m. live. Encouraging everyone to get there early. Side note on this one, Coach Dooley, who cut his teeth at Southern University as assistant coach, comes back to Baton Rouge. I'm sure he's going to be fired up for that one, especially after last year. Oh, there you go. You see, you threw a shot there. You threw a shot right there at them. That was last year. Oh, yeah. Let's move quickly off of that. Yeah, I hear you, Dr. Prince. He's let me know that was last year. October the 19th, and we'll hear from Dr. Prince in a minute. October 19th, Jackson State at Mississippi Valley State, ESPN 3, 2 p.m. live, and ESPNU, tape delay at 12:15 a.m. October the 24th, you have Jackson State at Prairie View A&M, ESPNU, 6:30 p.m. live. It's a Thursday night game. Then on the 26th, October, Alabama A&M and Alabama State, the Magic City Classic, ESPN 3, 2:30 p.m. live. You can see it later that night at 9:30 p.m. ESPNU. November the 2nd, Alabama A&M at Southern University, ESPN 3, 4 p.m. live. That's homecoming. Folks, Southern Knights, you get there way before that time if you want to get into the stadium. You know what I mean. Alcorn State at Grambling State, boy, a big one. ESPN 3, 2 p.m. live. Tape delayed on ESPNU at 9:30 p.m. the same night. November the 23rd, Alcorn State at Jackson State. ESPN 3, 2 p.m. live. And then, of course, December the 7th at 3 p.m., 2019 SWAC Football Championship, ESPNU, 3 p.m. live. And once again, that will be at the stadium on the campus of the higher seed. In all honesty, I'm hoping it's just a grand old weekend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. But we shall see. Everybody else wants it at their institution, at their stadium. Let the games begin. Good morning to you, Dr. Prince. I'm sure you heard everything that I said.
You're right about that, brother. I heard everything that you said. Good morning to you, sir. How are you today?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
You know what? I'm all right, man. I'm fine. Thankful to be in the land of the living, and life is too short to complain. But I'm good.
That is a word of the wise. Yes, sir.
And for the record, man, I heard you loud and clear on last year's event. I just want you to know, and not keeping track, but that's the 32nd time that you've made mention of that score. And I'm just saying, I love you, man. But when I get close to you, if you feel a little slice on your side, that's because I hit you with that razor. I done went on down the road.
There may be furniture moving in, but I know that's last year, and I had to eat some crow, but I was happy to do that because if you remember, I picked Prairie View to win the football game, and you told me before the broadcast, I got a feeling Southern's going to be ready, and you were right on that one. I mean, were they ready? My goodness.
All right, that's you're getting on 33. You hit the
But your thoughts, on this television schedule, the Southwestern Athletic Conference that it released this past week.
Well, I'm glad to hear there's been an amendment from the original release of the schedule, because the first game of the season, the Labor Day Classic between Prairie View and Texas Southern, of course, it's going to be on ESPN3, and it was going to be tape delayed on ESPNU. And listening to you read out the schedule, there's been an amendment, because that was the only game to be released from the original release on ESPNU. And I'm not going to eat up a whole bunch of time. Thank God to have 13 games on the affiliation of ESPN. But my bottom line has been this. When you dissect the schedule, theoretically, there are 2 SWAC games that are actually live ESPN-produced spots, and that's the Jackson State Prairie View game and the SWAC Football Championship. And I'm thankful. I don't want anybody to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm not casting any shade against anything, but in the infamous words of our illustrious commissioner, who I think is off and running well, considering what he's inherited at the commissioner's position at the Southwestern Athletic Conference. But he said we now know and understand our worth, and if people don't value our worth, we'll gather our balls up and go home. ESPN is a great platform, great exposure. But if we're going to have these games on ESPN3, what is the difference, and why not keep it on the SWAC digital network? Because both of them are internet-based services. And that's all I'm going to say on that. Our people have responded to my shows. Well, ESPN is a bigger platform. Yes, it is. But who are going to find and search for those SWAC games, SWAC fans? So why not put it on the SWAC digital network? That's all I'm saying. But I'm happy to see and hear that we have 13 scheduled games on the network. I'm excited about it. And Prairie View is featured in 4 of those games. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, and on social media, it's been pretty lively.
Oh, I know.
I've had an Alcorn fan / alum basically said, "Wow, Southern Alcorn is not on there more." Jackson State fans are happy. Prairie View fans are happy. Yeah. Here's a quote from, let me give you 2, from the commissioner, Dr. Charles McClellan, who, by the way, still getting feedback from last week.
Awesome show, man. Awesome show.
That was on.
You are the man.
We appreciate him. Well, I just appreciate getting the information out, and I appreciate that Saturdays is not a bad day for Dr. McClellan.
Right.
And he's always been that way with me. When he was at Texas Southern, at Prairie View, always an open dialogue, and that's all you can ask for.
Right.
You can't be all things to all people, you know. It's like you have a line in the middle of the road. You can't veer off to the right. You can't veer off to the left. You got to be straight centered.
That's the sign. That's the sign of quality leadership. Because when you make decisions, someone's going to be pleased, someone's going to be displeased. That's part of the nature of the beast. But you have to consciously think your plan out and put it out there for it to be executed. And when the dust settles, that hopefully the decisions that have been made was an overall benefactor for all parties involved in the long term.
Yeah, well said. Dr. McClellan, the quote is, "This upcoming slate of games highlights several annual classics, traditional conference rivalries, and matchups that feature teams that played highly competitive games last season, while also providing viewers a unique look at the excitement and pageantry found on display any given day at a SWAC football game." And one of the comments that I got late, during the week, 4 or 5 days afterwards, they said they're pleased because with Dr. McClellan, it's somebody that's came up through the HBCU ranks of Southwestern Athletic Conference. So they feel that he will really be able to listen and interact because he's come up through the ranks, if I can use that terminology. And that's not throwing shade at the previous commissioner, but it's a big difference. It's a big difference. And to your point, will he make everyone happy all the time? No. And if you go in thinking that, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely.
You just try to be fair and boy, that sounds weird though. Fair and balanced, and that's the way it goes. A little short story here. The commissioner, when setting up the the interview, I said, "Boy, it would be nice to have that championship game." No, I'll put it this way. I told him, "Hopefully, I'll see you in Baton Rouge in December," and he chuckled. It would be a great environment, but I think he's going to say that regardless of wherever it's going to be.
Right.
You know,
right.
So I was trying to get a little points in there, but he was having none of that.
I understand. You're trying to create a point spread already, man. The season hadn't even kicked off yet.
Oh, you know me. What advantage I can get, I'm going to use it.
I guess you're going to have some big power fans to help deflect some of the long-distance field goal attempts too, huh?
Put it this way. A wind has been blowing one direction the whole game. All of a sudden, it moves.
Yes, sir.
Just enough. Yeah, but when it comes down to it, and God rest his soul, Coach Otis Washington, former head coach at Southern University, after a football game, if it was a loss, coach, what happened out there? Can you tell us, what was it? It was a lack of execution. And when they won, it was because they executed. So execution goes a long way, game planning. And then, and I think it's like this in any sport, being able to make adjustments.
Yes.
Quickly, not after the game is over.
On the fly is so important. Even sometimes you can't even wait till you get to the halftime break.
Yeah, right.
You got to make an adjustment on the fly. If I got a guy that's blowing up my left tackle and is killing my quarterback from the blind side, I can't wait sometimes to halftime. I got to pull out put a black back, I'm getting stumbled this morning. As you say, I'm getting all choked up. Put a back there to help chip or tight end or something. I have to make that adjustment on the fly.
Yeah. So it's one of those things you just got to take care of business. And this football season is fast approaching. Followers of a particular institution, they're going to be fired up. Everybody starts the season 0-0, preparation, fall camp, off-season conditioning and training. Student athletes on the football team and other athletes, they're in summer school. Most of the institutions have started summer school, and so you already have them there. Freshmen, I have a theory on that. If you have to have a lot of impact by quite a few freshmen, it tells you the state of your program. But what you want to do is have maybe one or two. If they can make that first or second unit and contribute right away, that's fine. We also see the transfer portal. Southern University has added about 8, 9, 10 transfers. Jackson State, they've added some. Alcorn's added a few. Just kind of monitor things and how they fit in. Now, one of the things I like, if I can say, about with Southern University, and in their case with their transfers, a lot of them basically after 1 year at the other institution, they're able to get into Southern University. So now you're looking at 3 to 4 years in most cases of all those. So that's almost like, if someone goes to a prep school,
right,
or junior college for 1 year, a couple of semesters, and then they're able to get in, you still have them at your new institution in about 4 years.
Yes.
Not a 1 year hit and wonder, or even a 2 year.
Right. A lot of those portals are working, as you may mention, for the grad transfer, where a student may have been a late bloomer for whatever reason or circumstances. They still have a year in most cases. That's all it is 1 year of eligibility. And that's almost like a lottery ticket. You got to, just because a person was at, let's say a person came from Oklahoma, and man, people get excited. Wow, this dude was at Oklahoma, but he might have been the 15th person on the depth chart at Oklahoma, and he graduated fast. And that's great, that he played at a Big 12 conference, but hopefully this person comes in with the ability to make an immediate impact.
And contribute, fit into the form that the football program that he's at now has instituted. And I know this may sound corny to some, but, when you come in, you don't you can't come in and say, well, I came from Oklahoma, I expect to start right away. That's not the attitude to have. Even if you, from a physical standpoint, you're really good, fit in and earn it. And I remember Doug Williams telling me this years ago. You can come into the program, but I've done my research, and you got to come in and what? Earn it.
Now, in that same breath, Carlos, if I'm going to offer an opportunity for you to come and be a part of my program, you sure enough better bring some heat when you get here. I don't want you resting on your laurels about where you come from, because it ain't where you from, it's where you at. You here right now, and I need you to produce, or I give you, as old Coach Tankersley used to say, I give you a one-way ticket and a red apple home, baby. Don't come here wasting my time. I need you to come in here with the intent of shaking the house up. I don't want to waste time on a transfer, whether they're a person coming from a JUCO, a person coming as a grad assistant, or you just getting a second opportunity. I don't want you coming here half-stepping. I want you to come here with intent and malice in a good way to get some things done. You should come here with a chip on your shoulder to prove that you have every right to be here, whether I'm just now walking on or I came up as a freshman. I'm going to show you better than I can tell you.
On that note, we're going to take a quick time out. Coming up next, he's ready. Coach Kerrick Jackson, head baseball coach at Southern University. A new 3-year extension, a raise from $85,000 to $103,000, 3-year extension with a 4th year as an option. He's happy. We're going to talk to him next. I'm happy. Dr. Prince is happy. St. Louis native. Coming up next, Coach Kerrick Jackson, head baseball coach at Southern University. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
One voice. It can get the point across, but it only carries so far. Add a voice. It's richer, louder, but that has limits too. Add a third voice. It's even more powerful. Add another, and many, many more. And we are stronger than ever. That's the power of a community coalition. They help community groups, faith groups, civic organizations, PTAs, employers, and many others in your community organize their resources and focus them where they're needed most, like fighting to keep kids away from drugs. Ask a group that you belong to if they should belong to a community coalition. It's easy to get involved. Visit helpyourcommunity.org and they'll tell you exactly how your group can help. That's helpyourcommunity.org, because you get more when we get together. Brought to you by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Ad Council.
Broadcasters come into our lives on radio and TV, bringing us information and entertainment. Broadcasters are there for us, but who is there for them when they fall on hard times? The Broadcasters Foundation of America provides financial assistance to broadcasters in acute need due to a critical illness, accident, or other serious misfortune. If you know of a broadcaster on the air or behind the scenes who may need our help, please share our message. Visit broadcastersfoundation.org.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. A lovely day in the background playing. It is a lovely day if you are a Southern University alum, supporter, fan, and baseball fan. Coach Kerrick Jackson gets a new contract extension to stay at Southern University, and I'm going to hear firsthand from the guy, Coach Kerrick Jackson. Coach Jackson, good morning to you first and foremost, and congratulations, sir.
Good morning to you as well. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. So, good Louisiana food, heat and humidity. You'll get a chance to take part of that for another 3 years at least, maybe 4, and hopefully longer than that. How do you feel about getting the contract extension and your thoughts on what that means as far as a commitment from Southern University?
It's a good thing. I'm glad that they were able to, that they felt comfortable with giving me an extension, and hopefully as time goes on, those extensions will get a little bit longer than 3 years. Ultimately, the goal for me is to stay here and try and build something that, again, is resonates on a national level, and I think we have the opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Last time we talked a few weeks ago, of course, we kind of talked about the possibility of staying on now that it's official. What has been the immediate impact with now signing, and I know it was yesterday, getting a new contract? What has been the impact besides?
Well, like you said, I think since it just happened, we won't know until we start getting a little bit further into our recruiting process. That was always the thing with kids, is when you're recruiting kids. And so, for example, we're recruiting kids that are 2020s that will graduate in the spring of 2020. And so for them, there's always the question, you have a contract for 3 years, you have a contract for 2 years. I plan on being in school 4 years. What does that mean for me? And so hopefully this gives them a little bit more confidence that we'll be here at least for the first 2 years of their time on campus. And again, if we're able to do some things, hopefully get something even a little bit more long term.
Coach, you may not, cannot maybe talk about as far as names of recruits, and you kind of just talked about how now getting it finalized as a good thing. Any incoming recruits or those who have already signed, how much of an impact will they have on the program going forward? I mean, I know they're green, but down the line.
You know what? Like you said, I think on paper we're really excited. But as we all know, what happens on paper, what happens when they cross the line, when the lights come on, can be two different things. So the kids that we are bringing in that will start in the fall of 2019, we're excited about them. We're using some pretty good firepower offensively, but at the same time, I think we're bringing in some kids that can step in and fill some of those voids. And also adding some depth on the pitching mound to make us a little bit better there as well. So again, on paper, we look really, really good. And now it's just up to us as a coaching staff to make sure that we get the best out of them, and the things that we saw in them that attracted us to them through the recruiting process, we get them here to come and do those things on the field.
Visiting with Coach Kerrick Jackson, head baseball coach at Southern University. Coach, if someone would ask you, right now, where do you see the baseball program at the next point, 4 or 5 years from now? Would you tell them you see the program doing great? Do you see them getting back to a regional and perhaps winning a game or two? And then ultimately, you've mentioned about getting to Omaha. I think that's a good thing, because if you can think about it, you're going to try to achieve it.
No question. Like you said, I think from day one, when I was first hired, we talked about Omaha. We'll continue to talk about Omaha. We talked about wanting to be able to get ourselves in position to be in a conference tournament and win a conference tournament championship and get into a regional. And those are all things that we laid out for the beginning, and didn't put a timetable on it because as reporters were asking me at the time, I said it'll happen when it happens. So we moved the needle pretty far from year 1 to year 2. And so by doing that, I think we established a new level current expectations and not goals. And so in that, now the guys that are coming in and the kids that we are recruiting, there's a new level of expectation because we've accomplished some of those goals. And so in accomplishing those goals and setting new goals, as I said, when you accomplish goals, I think the goals now become expectations, and then your new goals, you leave those out there. And Omaha is still that goal. Winning a game in a regional, winning a regional is still that goal. So I think we'll continue to march forward towards those types of things. And as we grow as a program, as we start to get some better resources and do some things that'll be able to put us in a position to help these kids develop at the highest level, then I think you'll see some pretty good things coming out of our program that will allow us to resonate on a national landscape.
Coach, have the coaches in the conference, have they been able to discuss some things that maybe can move the programs in a better direction, or to make it more solid as far as some things that they can do to make the conference better as a whole? Have y'all had that discussion at the spring meetings?
Yes, we have. And I think that's the one thing that I like about our conference is that I think we do have guys in our league that want to move that needle and put us at that next level. And again, at the end of the day, it still comes down to resources and doing those types of things. And, I'm a firm believer you can be first class on a low budget. So I think we just have to figure out how we can operate at that level with what we have and be able to put ourselves in a position where, from a competitive standpoint, we can raise our conference to a level that we're seen as a conference that competes on a national level year in and year out. Because I think if we can raise the level of our conference play, then it helps us as individual teams be part of that conversation. And we have good coaches in our league that have the ability to do those things. So hopefully we can work together to make that happen. And, again, it doesn't take away from anybody's individual program success that they're wanting to have. But at the same time, it can lift us all up to make it easier for us to compete on those levels.
You've mentioned resources a couple of times here in this conversation. And from the outside looking in, we've talked on this show often about seeing the Southerns play the Mississippi Valley States and Alabama States during the regular season. Is there a push to do that, or does it still come down to financially being the problem if it doesn't get to that point?
In some conversations that we've had, I don't even know if it's a financial issue just from the standpoint of I think they're doing it in softball, they're doing it in basketball, so they're doing it in some of the other sports where they're playing cross-conference games. So I think if we can start, maybe we do 1 or 2 a year that maybe you don't play everybody in the conference, but maybe you play everybody on your side and you play 2 teams on the other side. But I think there's some things that we could do. We've talked about having a 10-week schedule, and obviously your 2 teams between Alabama State and A&M and Prairie View and Texas Southern, that you alternate that schedule so they're not traveling twice to the farthest parts of the conference in 1 year. And I think again doing those things now that gives us a 30-game schedule with our conference teams, and so you get a 30-game schedule. Now that opens the week up. Our season up so we can play 56 games. Now you're playing 56 games. You can go out. You can play some of the bigger schools in the beginning of the year, which is when all those teams, the SEC, the Big 12, ACC, Big 10, all those schools are playing a 10-week schedule. So that means their first 4 weeks of the schedule are open for them to play money games. And so if we need to go out and get money, well, then now we open ourselves up to having the possibility to be able to do that. And then increasing the level of opponents that we play during the midweek schedule that can hopefully raise our conference RPI up and put us in a position to make some noise when it comes to the national landscape of baseball. Yeah,
for Southern Universities, some success, of course, LSU, Eastern Illinois, in those midweek games. I guess some people don't think that those games are important, but I'm sure a coach would say those midweek games are very important.
There's no question. I think that it's been proven year in and year out that if you're playing just your conference opponents, and if you're playing too many non-Division I teams, that can hurt you. because then now other teams don't want to schedule you because your RPI is too low. And so if you're below that 200, it's rough. It's tough for teams to want to play you on a regular basis, specifically when it comes to late in the year. So if we can eliminate playing, non-Division I games, if we can start to play teams outside of our league on a regular basis, then I think it can put us in a really good position. And then, like I said, I think if we, with wins and losses being the paramount in most guys' situations, if we increase our conference schedule to 30 games, then now it puts us in a position where we're playing more conference games than non-conference games. Right now, we all play more non-conference games than we do conference games. So then when you look at a win-loss standpoint, when it comes to that, well, then the ADs are looking at, okay, well, what did you do? Well, yeah, guys are going to schedule games that are going to put them in a position to win versus you have those 30 conference games where now you can go 500 in conference or a little bit above because you got a good schedule there against your conference opponents. So those are games that you can have a chance to win.
Visiting with Coach Kerrick Jackson, head baseball coach at Southern University. Appreciate the time, Coach Jackson. Coming on two quick things. I want you to talk about your staff, and there's some incentives in there for your staff along with yourself beyond the contract extension, and then also, do you have any preference? We're kind of hearing about maybe the SWAC championship tournament may move. Is that something that, as a head coach, you think about it, or you had a philosophy of it doesn't matter where we're going to play, we just have to be prepared to get to the tournament and win it?
I think it's twofold. Obviously, for us, this works because we have a large fan base in New Orleans, and this year we had great crowds at the tournament, but at the same time, there's some things about the facility in New Orleans that is a staff that we don't like. Okay.
Okay, yeah, we got you back. You were kind of fading on us a little bit.
Okay. So, yeah, I said I think there's some things there that from a coaching standpoint and other coaches in the conference, there's things that we don't like about New Orleans, and being able to move to a different venue may benefit us. And New Orleans is always expensive, no matter what time of the year you go there. And so that's something that factors in. I like the idea of being able to play someplace where turf is going to be part of that, because I think that when you have rain and those types of things, you don't have to have major delays. You just need to stop raining. I also like the idea of it, if we can keep it at urban youth academies, because I think with our mission being HBCUs, to be in those types of environments and have those kids that are attending those academies come out and see us play, I think there's a lot of value to that. To play in a AA stadium or something like that, I think would be really cool, but we're going to play in a 15,000 seat stadium and have 1,100 people. I don't know if that benefits us. So yeah, there's a lot of different things that we've talked about. I brought up a proposal of hosting the first two rounds, similar to what we do in basketball, hosting the first two rounds on campus. Mm-hmm. So whoever wins, the top two teams from each side, they host the first round on campus. And now you're only taking 4 teams to a neutral site. And then maybe that puts us in a position where now we can go to ESPN and say, listen, this is going to be a 4-team conference championship. There's 6 games involved in this thing. Put all these games on the network. Our games, if they're on ESPN3, like anybody else's, I think we get just as much viewership. And if you can have all those games on there, now you got the 4 best teams. So now you're getting some quality baseball, and we're not retreading. You guys have seen our tournaments year in and year out. We don't have the pitching depth. So when you have to go through and you're retreading the guy that you started on Wednesday and bringing him back on Sunday, that can be trouble. And so it can affect the quality of play that we have when we go out of these tournaments. So I think any way that we can figure out how to, again, raise the level of play and put us in a championship caliber atmosphere with other teams in the country, I think that's something that we should look at.
Very interesting. We will follow that. Your staff, talk about how much they mean to you.
Oh, without them, I can't do it. We have quality guys on the staff with Chris Kenshaw and Jerry Houston, T.J. Perkins, and I think having those guys there, they're the guys that are doing things on the ground day to day. And so me getting the Coach of the Year award or whatever it may be, it's nothing with it's really their award, but nobody, looks at assistant coaches when it comes to that. I don't think there's any head coach out there in the country that can say that the Coach of the Year award, he won it. And I'm definitely not that guy. So they mean the world to me, specifically with being able to do the things that I need to do from a head coach managing standpoint. We're going to have the guys that we have with the knowledge base that they have, puts us in a really good position to go out and be successful.
Well, appreciate it, Coach, giving us some time. I know, I guess you're kind of on vacation maybe. We appreciate the time that you're giving us. Oh, last thing, what's your favorite food since you've been in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge?
Shoot, I mean, that's a trick question right there.
I like to throw one of those out every now and then.
Yeah, it's funny because my oldest son is a very picky eater. But when we came down for my press conference when I got the job, we went to Parents and he fell in love with charbroiled oysters. And then,
oh my goodness.
And then we then having, and I'd had it before, but them having crawfish for the first time, and I didn't think he would be on that. And he loves crawfish, and so I think it's all of it. I don't know if there's a favorite because when you start to look at it, it's all good. And down here, that's what I told my wife. I said, don't come down here thinking you're going to be on a diet. You just have to work out more. So we're both leaning towards that, working out more, so we don't put ourselves in a position where we can't function on a daily basis.
Oh, I understand. Word to the wise. That's directed at me. Appreciate it. Coach Jackson, once again, congratulations. St. Louis Blues, Southern 2019 SWAC baseball tournament champions, and just a terrific season now, topping it off with an extension and a raise, and you're still at Southern, hopefully for many more years. Appreciate the time, Coach.
Appreciate it as well. Thank you all very much.
All right. That was Coach Kerry Jackson, head baseball coach at Southern University. Contract extension, new contract, basically gist of it, 3 years with a 4-year option held by, I guess, the university to discuss, and a raise to $103,000. Also some other incentives in there. But Dr. Prince, what did you think about the interview with Coach Jackson?
I think it was a great interview. I especially love when he said, and I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, where just because you don't have the money, I'm paraphrasing, don't mean you can't have and operate in class and dignity. And I love that, because you can still have the standards, you can still execute, even if you're operating on a shoestring budget. And I really got excited to hear him talk. He's a great baseball guy. He's a great baseball guy. And I'm not saying that just because he's from St. Louis, neither.
Well, but time number 40th, that you put that in there. So I'm trying to answer a listener right back, and it's something, and it's not dealing with baseball. I'm going to say that's a legitimate question. A listener, and this has been a public thing. He's basically saying that have things changed. You remember Southern University and the article that came out, Grambling State University, they in football, the article talked about the way they were getting things done by utilizing, transfers. And then with Coach Odoms at Southern University, taking a different approach through the high school, recruiting and then getting a kid through 4 years. This listener brings up the point that, how times have changed. Now, Southern University is using that same system. with the with transfers. And I've heard that before.
You got to make it happen, man. You got to make it happen because unfortunately, we have become a microwave society, which means we want it right now. You know, the crock
quick, fast, in a hurry.
Yeah, quick, fast, in a hurry. I want it yesterday. And that's how fast things have to be moving right now. The crock pot approach is not going to keep you employed long in most institutions.
And as far as that, I like both.
Well, you got to have a combination. You got to have a combination.
Yeah, the microwave and the crock. Some good things are done in the crock pot as well. So what did you say? You got to use both.
Well, look. Let me put it like this. I don't want my beans prepared in no microwave.
No. Oh no.
That's blasphemy.
That's an abomination.
Yeah, that's blasphemy. I don't want that. But I could take heating up some leftovers in a microwave real quick, fast, in a hurry. So it's a balance. It's a combination of things. You know, do I necessarily have to wait for the water to boil on top of a stove, or can I throw it in the microwave for 2 minutes and be done with it? So it's about a balanced approach, a conscientious approach on where you're going, but you got to have a plan of execution in order to get that developed.
Well, you have to use both. That's correct. Yeah. Boy, we went on off on a cooking example. It made me just a bit
challenged in the hunger area,
malnourished. Yeah. But Coach Jackson, with the new contract and new extension, and we wondered what would happen. I think we both were right, close to right, all right, that that extension proved to be now total. His initial contract, 2 years. So, and before the show, we were talking. It's just a matter of how you want to do it. In some places, some institutions, I don't think it's many here, but I can think of two. Now, I want to start a fight.
No, you won't start a fight. I promise.
But most some places they'll give you 4 or 5 years up front. I've just said that it's not wrong or right. I'm just telling you from my experience at Southern University how it goes. You know, if you look at it, either 2 or 3 years, and then you get it on the back end. If I can use that terminology right there.
If you heard him, and I'm sorry I cut you off, but if you heard him, he was saying it's almost a challenge when you're recruiting a kid. If you are on a 2 or 3 year contract and the kids say, well, I plan to be a student for 4 years, you know, that affects a kid's decision making or a family's decision making if you're going to be around, you know, because no one wants a lame duck experience with a coach. So I'm hearing, I know he's happy. I know he's grateful. Got the raise, you know, staff taken care of. He got the 3 years, but I think he would have been a little bit more satisfied with a 4-year extension as far as building.
I mean, if I'm in charge, yeah, and depends on how my people of influence, how they feel about it. I'm making the case to them that, hey, I know we normally do X, Y, and Z, but let me explain, hear me out. Here's why in this specific case, we go against the grain and we offer a 4-year with an option of a 5th year. And as an AD, I think that's all you can do, because ultimately it's going to how you present it and then how they're going to respond to you. I mean, yeah, I'm happy as heck.
Right. Well, and you know what?
They got a 3 year, and that's what I said would happen.
Yeah, you did.
And I think you said it too.
Right.
But no, I did say 3.
We said 3. We said 3. Obviously, that's a no-brainer to go with 3. If you don't do 3, then I might have to. I love the expression.
I don't think he's going to turn down a 3 year. I mean, you know, did he want 4 or 5? Yeah, probably so.
Right, but if on the athletic directors going back to the power to be, look, This guy came in, he accepted our 2-year deal, and he proved himself worthy. Let's reinvest back in him for the 4-year. Now, instead, we know he can put together a team. Let's give him a chance now to build the program. And by building that program, a 4-year opportunity to build with that freshman transfer mixture, if you would, microwave, crockpot approach of building a program. We know he can build a team. Let's see if he can build a program. And I think you can do that legitimately with the 4-year extension. After the 4 years, if it had not materialized, then we can agree that it's time to part ways.
Well, let me answer this scenario. And good point. Let's not fall out over a 1 year.
Oh, no, we're not going to fall out. We're not going to fall out.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying hypothetically. Now, what happens? He's got a 3 and they got a 4th year for option, a mutual interest. What happens, let's say scenario, the next 2 years they win tournament championships. They fight through a tough TSU baseball program and improve Prairie View. See, I threw that one in.
Yeah, I got that
program.
That one. Thank you.
And then you have the flexibility to come in that second year of that 3 and say, hey, look, we still doing magnificently. You've got 2 championships. Again, let's talk about another extension before the time is up. I think that's a possibility. Do you think that's a possibility?
Well, that's always a great possibility, and as they say, it looks good and sounds good on paper, and once you get to that point, it's almost like a game of Russian roulette. I'm sorry, but I hate to use that terminology, and I say that simply because of this. I'm in my 3-year deal. I'm doing good in year 2 of the 3-year deal. Okay, let's come in and let's negotiate the backside before we get to the backside. Because the worst thing that you can do, in my opinion, is have a guy going into his final year of his contract, and they don't say it in front of the press conference or the microphones, but in the back of their mind, it's looming. Man, if I don't get it done this year, this is it, possibly. That's not a good situation to be in coaching.
Well, we're spurring some interest here. And look, it's no right or wrong,
But you know what? You're going to be right because this is your show.
Well, no. Well, I mean, it's my show, but I'm not right all the time.
Well, 98.9% of the time, you're going to be right because you're the man.
How about 97?
Okay.
Yeah,
see, you're right again.
Well, thank you. Let's just say it's a board option for the 4th year. Yeah. Another listener says, and I appreciate it. Bear with me. That's a typical contract. Of course, the coach is going to get as much as he can. The 4th year will be picked up if he stays consistently good. You are correct, Carlos. I added that part in there. Yeah, that's true. I can send that to you. Just kind of throwing, different scenarios out there. So that's part of negotiation.
No doubt.
And you're right. Coaches want to get, and again, I've always said this, and I'm glad Coach Jackson said it. Albeit I'm the head coach, I couldn't do it without good assistants.
Absolutely.
And in football, I've been guilty of this too. You talk about the offensive coordinator and defense coordinator, but what about those position coaches?
Right.
I always say you take care of them. They do the bulk of it.
Now, see, you just opened up another can of worms that we talked about. That's why
Pandora's box?
Yes, sir. Pandora's giant box. $15,000 to spread amongst your football staff as a bonus. Come on, man.
You referring to
the extension deal that Odom's got, and he got a $15,000 bonus to spread with his staff?
Well,
Hey guys, load up the truck.
Better.
We're going to Chick-fil-A on me.
They couldn't. And they're not open on Sunday. Yeah. To me, if I had a magic wand or a perfect world, I'm taking care of them.
You got to.
I'm taking care of them because they do the bulk of the work. They do a lot of it. To me, and one thing I noticed, I'm going to go back in time here. I was fortunate enough and allowed to go to the fall camp when Coach Richardson was here. And it's something I noticed about it. I've been around some head coaches before, but not many. I'll put it this way. And one of the things that struck me was, I say, here's this guy. He looks more like, at the time, a professor. He's making notes, and I'm going with Coach Richardson here. He's making notes. He's more like a CEO, just managing everything. But I saw those assistant coaches, and they were doing the bulk of it. And you can't do it all by yourself.
Well, the sign.
You can't. But I was particularly impressed with the organization. And, again, the head coaches get all the glory. But, man, those they're not appreciated enough.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In
those position coaches.
In collegiate athletics in particular, and I don't even care. Well, we'll keep it at a D1. A head coach is a CEO. And if you got a head coach that's got his hands on the daily operations of any program, that is a sign of disaster is just around the corner. Because you cannot do it all. One man cannot perfect anything on his own organizational-wise. That's why it's important that you understand your strengths, your weaknesses, what's going to make you better, what's going to be a hindrance to you, and you surround yourself with the right people that can keep you in place. On a political term, they say X amount of person, that person's too dumb to be a leader. But that person might be dumb in a whole bunch of areas, but they're smart enough to surround themselves with the right people to keep them in office. And that's the same operation of a coach.
Mm-hmm. Oh, boy, interesting. Let me switch back to baseball quickly. A listener says Southern is fortunate that there were no other programs seeking a college baseball of his ethnic background and success.
True.
Interesting.
True. And then
wait a minute. You're saying that like you know of a institution that.
Oh no, man! Look, don't you start. Don't you start. No, look, I'm already catching hell right now. Believe it or not, people have let the dog whispers go out that I have been currently bashing Prairie View's coach, which is a flat out lie, for lack of a better word. That I've been leading the charge of saying that he needs to be replaced, and I'm exposing it for what it is. All I do is report on facts. I've never required and asked that a person be relieved of their duties because that's their livelihood. But when you present the facts, people get their feelings on their shoulders and take it for whatever they want to take it. So when I'm not talking about Prairie View either, any particular institution that was open, it would have been some competition for the services of Carrick Jackson. He's a quality ball coach. So, you were fortunate that there were no openings and, potentially to raise the stakes, if you would, for his services to be retained.
If I didn't know better, I was saying there was a little shade there.
A little shade on what? How is that some shade?
Is there a little bit of jealousy there? No, I'm just talking in general.
Jealousy? No.
I'm in general here,
and I feel you. But listen, let's as the folks say, let's keep it 100.
So in other words, Southern doesn't. If a institution wanted him, they could actually have gotten him because
money talk and everything else walks.
Okay, That's what I was looking for.
Let's go back. Let's go
back. So what Reverend Ike says is true. It's the lack of money is the root of all evil, not the love of money.
Well, Ephesians, the 7th chapter, not Ephesians, but oh my God, because I said not Ephesians, Ecclesiastics, the 7th chapter, simply says that money is a defense. Money helps you keep things moving in the right direction. People get it mistaken that money is the root of all evil. It said, for the love of money is the root of all evil, but money is a defense. And if I need some defense strengthening and I need some added additional arsenals, then I have to spend the money to get those necessary devices. So it becomes a defense. Now, I'm not saying that money is the cure all be all. You got to have some money along with some logical tactics on why you're doing what you do. But let's not get it twisted now. If the money, if it comes down to money, when it came down to Coach Dooley, we had a little bit more money to offer than the others that were at the table. As a result, he's at Prairie View. It is what it is.
Yeah, and let me say this. Someone just said, sometimes money doesn't mean championships.
Absolutely right. Did I just say?
It may not mean, but we still talk about, what else we talk about? Resources. You got to have resources. Position coaches. If you look at the best overall athletic program, one would say that's Alabama State, right?
Right. According to the Commissioner's Cup. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And they put a pretty good amount of money, you would think, into their program.
No doubt.
I.e., they haven't won football. Okay.
Yeah, they haven't won in football. See, now in Alabama State's case, for what it is, they have not won where it mattered most, which has been on the gridiron and on the hardwood. They have not. They failed in those areas. So the people are not quite satisfied, if you would, in Montgomery, Alabama, because they say, we spend all this money in these two sports. There are money-generating sports, but yet we're still failing. Coach Ely is on the plank right now. If he doesn't get it done, guess what? They're going to be looking for another football coach. And they might do it mid-season like they've customarily have these past couple of times around. Well,
let me do this. Wow. This has spurred a lot of interaction, boy, I can tell you. A listener says, I don't agree someone else could have gotten Jackson. Jackson is the highest paid coach in the SWAC. Stop right there. When you add the $25,000 to his salary, he can withdraw from the foundation. That's another incentive.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, Jackson's making $128,000. Nobody in the SWAC is paying that. Now, that's from a listener.
Well, no, I understand that, and that goes beyond a doubt. But if someone truly desired to go and get Kerrick Jackson, and money is not an option, he can be convinced. And that's practically almost anybody. So you can't tell me that if I felt like, man, this is the next hottest thing, we're going to lock this guy up for 10 years. Okay, Southern is going to max him out at 125, and that's coming from the foundation. I'm going to give him a little comfort. I'm going to offer him 135, and he don't have to worry about whether the foundation want to come through or not. I'm going to guarantee his money, and I'm going to lock him up for a 6-year deal. He would consider that. So, I mean...
And I wonder what university would offer that. I'm just wondering. I can think of one or two in the conference.
Well, what's the one or two that you're thinking about?
One would be Prairie View.
Uh-huh. That they could, but I don't think they would.
They have the money.
Well, Prairie View is not struggling financially. I got that straight from the source, the athletic director himself. Now, I can assure you that budget is not a concern of ours, but Prairie View is economically conscious of how they spend their money, and deservedly so. That's how they get to be in the financial position that they're in. But don't say that I don't think anybody couldn't get him if you didn't want him. If you wanted him, it's just like anybody. If you want something bad enough, you will make it happen.
Oh boy, it's getting good. Ding, ding. Take off the gloves. Alyssa says, "Ask your former women's basketball coach." That's Coach Pugh. Let me tell you what I heard about that. Yeah. But I was told, and I'm sure somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm not right all the time. I'm wrong. But if I'm wrong, I'll come back and say it.
Okay.
Then we got to get to a break.
Okay.
I was told by an insider that based on what Coach Pugh had done at Southern University, and by the way, let me stop right there. The women's basketball coach, Coach Fonchez, also on that board of supervisors meeting, was also given a raise for what he was able to do in his first year.
Uh-huh.
But back to Coach Pugh. I was told that based on what she had done, and at the point it's coming into the last year of that contract, she felt why wasn't an offer there already to extend it.
Okay.
And of course, yeah, Prairie View came in and they paid her more, but it was more of the principal thing that she was insulted.
Okay.
That Southern waited to the last minute.
Right.
In her opinion, to start negotiating for something. But for a new contract. But at the end of the day, the decision was made. She's at Prairie View A&M, and when that happened, I publicly said I appreciate what she has done or what she did for Southern University. She's moved on. End of the story. End of discussion for me.
Okay.
I'm not going to get on the air and find every little thing to nitpick about what she didn't do or what she did. The record says what she did was outstanding, and I wished her the best.
Right. And in reference, to the person that's now you talking about was casting some shade, ask about your current women's basketball coach. If we're going to go there, I could say, well, the Southern experience and success this year come off of her residue. So let's see where you are 2 or 3 years from now.
Well. Let me say this: the Coach Fonchez was the right hand man, literally.
He was the right hand man that had to go through her approval. And
because she's the superior. But the bulk of the recruiting, like the class they got and the transfers that they got in for this year, he was the number one recruiter. So it wasn't like somebody from the outside. And you're right. We'll see a couple of years from now.
Right. I
think he's going to do an outstanding job.
I believe he's going to do an outstanding job too, but I also have confidence.
And if he doesn't, I'll talk about it.
I have confidence that Sandy Pugh is going to do an outstanding job at Prairie View. This was year one of a team that she inherited. She basically had to come in with whatever ingredients were in the cupboard and put together a palatable meal, and she's done that. Now, this is her first full year of recruiting. She's going to be able to make some things happen. She's doing some fantastic off-season transitions right now, and you'll continue to add to the ingredients into the cupboard of the finished product. So in both cases, it was a win-win for both institutions. Sanchez was able to keep things pretty much seamless, and Prairie View is being introduced to a new way of seeing and operating things from the women's basketball side.
And I think Prairie View, Southern, Grambling State women, Jackson State women, they've done some outstanding. It's going to be a very competitive race.
Yes,
and
sir.
We'll definitely look in 2 years from now and see if those same teams are battling it out each year for a conference and a regular season championship.
Absolutely.
I think that's an excellent point. But, oh boy! Oh, they're still pouring in. We got to take time out.
They love you, man.
Alyssa says, "Yes, you could have offered 2 more. Banks didn't want you." Okay.
Well, of course.
I think we're going to have to cut it. Yeah. Prairie View, as far as offering and whoever they want to get, they can get if they want to.
I just made that point. I mean, so But don't
I'm being facetious. When I'm saying that, but if they can get whoever they want, hey, I think we're gonna look and see. Let's see in 2 years from now. Let's see what happens.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And on that note, oh yeah, Cynthia Cooper, Texas Southern. We got to take a time out. Charles Evans is patiently waiting, and then we've got Brandon B.J. Jones. Oh boy, here we go. The best quarterback coming back, the best running backs. It's good conversation to have, but at the end of the day, on the field, who gets it? Who gets it done? Can't wait for the SWAC Football Media Day. MEAC Football Media Day. Should be very interesting. Take a time out. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network.
Hello, this is Lonzo Hardy, Vice President of the SWAC Alumni Association. The SWAC Alumni Association is an organization founded in 1999 with the goal of enhancing the great legacy of excellence in the SWAC as well as preserving the athletic heritage of the SWAC. Its membership is open to former athletes as well as current and former coaches, assistant coaches, athletic administrators, referees, employees of conference member institutions, as well as fans of swac-sports. Individuals interested in gaining membership can contact the organization's president, Roscoe Nance, at 509 Worcester Street in Herndon, Virginia, 20170. Annually, the SWAC Alumni Association holds a Legends Award in which Lifetime Achievement Awards are presented. Occasionally, a legend of the conference is honored in a roast, and annually 1 or 2 former student athletes are presented degree completion scholarship awards. Contact the organization's president, Roscoe Nance, at 509 Worcester Street in Herndon, Virginia, 20170.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. It's been extremely hot in Baton Rouge, and I guess in the whole region. Heat index yesterday, 108. Boy, it's getting spicy and hot here on this week's show. Will we get up to 108 degrees? I think we may get past that. But now joining me is Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Charles, good morning.
Good morning.
A nice trip, now back in familiar territory, correct?
Yeah, nice trip, but come back to this heat in this steam bath, which is Mississippi. I was in San Diego for 5 days, and I don't even think it cracked 75 degrees the whole time I was there.
Oh, my. In a perfect world. I mean, 75 at night in Baton Rouge. Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
78 most nights. But I guess we should be accustomed to it, but then we never get used to it, as the old saying goes. You know, humidity and heat. And just think, those guys and coaches going to be out there at fall camp. We say fall camp, but it's in the middle of the summer. Well, you know, in the summer. So go figure. It is going to be interesting. Well, Charles, coming into this segment, previously we've talked to Coach Kerrick Jackson, who gets a new contract extension. And I'm just curious on your thoughts, a 3-year extension with 4th-year option and basically an $18,000 raise. And if you're an accountant, you can do the taxes on that. And also some incentives for his assistants. You get your thoughts on that.
Well, hey, Southern took care of him, and I think that's the right way to put it. I mean, deservedly so. He bet on himself and won. I mean, and he won big. So now Southern can't hide from anyone. Everybody knows what Southern is about, and now the challenge really begins in terms of continuing the high standards of Southern baseball program. Coach has been paid. His assistants are going to be paid if they meet the threshold. So he bet on himself, he won, and now it's really time to deliver, and we'll see if that happens.
And he also said some interesting things about what they talk about at spring meetings. As far as playing more interconference schedule, maybe not everybody on the opposite side, but starting off with maybe a couple. He did acknowledge the Alabama States and Alabama A&M, and going to Texas and vice versa. But I also asked him about the thoughts in general about the SWAC baseball tournament. And once again, we heard something that I first heard from Coach Carlos James, your favorite SWAC baseball coach, about New Orleans being so expensive. And I'm wondering, has it always been that way, or is this post-Katrina? But I've heard that several times now about how expensive it is to have that tournament in New Orleans from a coach's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, I think they're probably talking about it in terms of hotels, probably more so than anything. Baseball players in the tournament typically, have one big meal a day, especially if they're playing, and if they're in the loser's bracket, they really can't afford to eat, the big heavy stuff because they might be playing 2 games, just the way the schedule sets up. But yeah, I have heard that from a bunch of coaches. I know our baseball coach, Brett Richardson, kind of perused around, and he found a pretty good deal at the Wyndham in Metairie, which is and I actually stayed there a couple of days. Pretty good deal there. I don't know if this is something that the conference is going to have to get involved in. I know Dr. McClellan talked about partnering with the Marriott brand to get discounted rates for SWAC events. I don't know if that's something that they would get involved in to reduce the cost of staying in New Orleans, because New Orleans is a tourist area. It's a high-cost area. I mean, you can find some decent hotels, but in New Orleans, but how far are you willing to stay away from the baseball facility? Traffic in New Orleans, as you know, can be pretty hectic at times. So I think it's a combination of cost, how far you want to stay away from the stadium. I think, hotel costs are the biggest issue that coaches are having. I don't think anyone's having an issue with feeding the team. I do think the only issue is hotel. And if the SWAC gets involved, because it is a big economic impact wherever the tournament is, especially New Orleans, I think if the SWAC gets involved and bring down the hotel rates, I think that's about all the conference can do, because you can't do much about the travel. I mean, if you're in Pine Bluff and you're playing in New Orleans, then, that's just the cost of doing business and getting on a bus for 6 or 7 hour ride. Not much the conference can do about that. But hotels, I do think if it's brought up, maybe the conference can help out and bring down those expenses in terms of, staying in some fairly decent hotels at a decent price.
Well, like I said, he had mentioned it, and I've heard other coaches mention it, and basically Coach Jackson also talked about, if you played at a AA park, then the ambience, looking at it as far as, you got a 15, 12, 13,000 seat stadium and then you have, 1,100 in there. So we'll see what happens as far as, will it stay in New Orleans or will it move? But I think all of those concerns and stuff, they'll probably consider it, and make the best choice possible.
Here's my guess on that, Carlos, is, and I'll ask the commissioner about it. Media Days coming up in a few weeks. I think you bringing in Coach Cador to help study all the nuances of the tournament, where it is, how can you improve things My guess is that it's going to stay in New Orleans for now. Now could be relative, could be another year, could be another 2 years, but for now, I do think the tournament's going to stay there. Maybe at Wesley Barrel they make some improvements. I know there's some complaints about the dugout sizes. You know, if you've been there and if you've seen it, the dugouts are really small. I've heard some mild complaints about that. But I do think, in my opinion, I think for the next year or two, the tournament will stay there. You talk about playing in a minor league ballpark. There's an expense with that. You know, you're paying for labor, you're paying to have the lights on, and that cost might be. I'm not saying that it's maybe too much for the conference to bear, but that's not cheap either. So where's the middle, as we like to say? On one end, you want to improve from Wesley Barrel. On the other end, you go to a minor league park, and you know that's been talked about, but the cost involved with that. So where's the middle ground and all that? I guess we'll find out here soon.
Yeah, I think the middle will be, because he also mentioned something else, and I almost forgot about it just that quickly. They talked about having, just like basketball, the higher seeds playing on their campus, and then sending the best four then to a neutral site. And then he mentioned talking with, media platform, ESPN, and saying, hey, we've got the best four teams here now. And he also mentioned, and he said, of course, you've seen in the SWAC tournament how the game is presented. About time you get in the second or third day of the tournament, pitching is at a premium. So I kind of like the idea of, hey, Alcorn's number one seed out of the East. You play the first round on your diamond. And then when you get to the final four, then you move it to a neutral site. What do you think about that?
I think
that's too much for you, huh? Can't
I mean, I'm just looking at it from what I hear coaches talk about, the money component, and it's always the financials. I'm sure some coaches will say, well, I got to pay to travel to this site, and then if I happen to win, then I got to pay to travel back home and then go to New Orleans. The cost, or wherever the tournament's going to be, I think that's going to raise the eyebrows of a lot of coaches in the conference if that happens. I'm sure that that would be looked at, but if you think about it, if you're playing at Southern, if I'm Alabama A&M and I'm playing at Southern, then I got to travel to Southern, and then if I happen to win that, then I'm going to the tournament. Then I got another expense, and it's already we've heard some of the issues in terms of staying on campus and having to deal with that and feed the team. And I know that's the cost of doing business. There's not much you can do about that unless the schedule changes to where, and Dr. McClellan talked about that with you last week in terms of shortening the schedule to where you have a quick turnaround between the regular season and the tournament instead of all this lag time in which your players are staying around and you got to feed them and all that other stuff. But I think that the biggest issue will probably be, man, I got to pay to travel to Southern, and then I got to decide if I'm going to come home, or I got to, I think that will be talked about. I think if those issues are ironed out, then I think that it could be looked at. I do think there needs to be a central location, something that's centrally located to every school in the conference to where maybe the expense isn't so much. But I do think that would be the biggest issue. You got to travel here, you got to pay. Then you got to maybe go back home, you got to pay. Then you got to travel to the tournament, wherever that is, then you got to pay. So I think that would be, the biggest concern. If those can be ironed out, I think it could work.
Well, for some, and then, as Dr. McClellan said previously, the incentive is to do well so you can host. That would be the incentive. Then your cost is cut. But, hey, it's just something that they mentioned, and we'll see what happens as far as the tournament. All these things are really interesting to see how they're going to kind of listen to the concerns of those who participate, match that with financial stability and concerns. That's why he's making the big bucks. He's in a tough position, but he's a commissioner. He'll get it done. He'll get it done. Next topic, quickly. SWAC football television schedule. What feedback you hearing about that?
I know our fans are happy about it. I got a chance to just look at the schedule briefly and break down the number of times our teams are going to be on TV. I see JSU 5. I've heard I'll talk about that obviously on social media. Prairie View 4, Alcorn 3, Grambling and Southern twice, and then Bama State A&M, TSU, UAPB once. I think our fans are happy with it. I think especially the last 2 weeks, you're talking about Alcorn Grambling and Alcorn Jackson State. Those games are pivotal in terms of who's going to go in the SWAC championship game. So I think our fans are happy with it. But, you go on social media and like, why is Jackson State on 5 times? You've heard that back and forth, and some people are poking their chest out about being on TV 5 times. I like the schedule. The one thing I do like is that every team is going to be on television at least once. That JSU PVU Thursday night game, only one Thursday night game, Carlos, and we've, for 100 years, you and I have talked about, do these Thursday night games work in our league? They only have one. So I think it's a good thing, but I do think in the future there's going to probably be more Thursday night games if ESPN offers it. But overall, I like.
You hear me? I'm going, oh boy.
Yeah, well,
one too many this year. But that's just my opinion.
Well, Commissioner I don't know if he mentioned it to you. I know he mentioned it to me. Previous commissioner, ESPN kind of dictates the tempo a little bit on that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't want the shebang the way it's delivered to you, if they say, hey, we're going to have 3 Thursday night games and we want you on those Thursday night games, you could take it. Or if you don't want it, as Charlie Neal told me 15 years ago, other conferences are going to line up to get these slots that the SWAC has. I don't think that's going to go away. As a matter of fact, I think what Commissioner mentioned is kind of improving the relationship between the SWAC and ESPN. Because it's been fractured a little bit, but I think he's trying to help repair that. So I think I like the schedule, like everybody's on, and I do like the matchups. And when we talk about these big matchups, and I think to have those games on, I think it's really big. And hopefully our fans turn out, number one, and I hope a lot of eyeballs watch these games because that's what's going to dictate our TV schedules going forward.
Well. Can I just be brutally honest, the fan part of me? The Thursday night games, Southern hasn't participated too much in that. But if it's a Thursday night game, if it's UAPB and Alcorn, I'm going to watch a little bit of it. But then I'm turning the channels constantly. Something else has gotten my attention. And maybe I need to do better. But now, if it's your institution that's on, your eyeballs are gonna stay on there a little bit more. I'm just being brutally honest. And speaking of that, a listener, and we encourage everyone to participate, says, "Hey, franchise, nobody gets ESPN 3. Southern always gets shortchanged. J-State actually has 2 games everyone can see on ESPN 2 and ESPNU. Why not SU?" Yes, we put that in the category of some people that, and I saw on social media that they're really kind of, voicing their opinions on that. Overall, I'll just say the schedule, it is what it is. Everybody's on there. You can't make everybody happy all the time. And that's my thoughts on the television schedule.
Yeah, some people, and I do know, talking with John Grant, these matchups, John Grant mentioned in the MEAC, the MEAC conference office kind of dictates the matchups. And Dr. Thomas is going to get with his folks and determine what's a good matchup on whether it's a Thursday or a Saturday. The MEAC kind of helps dictates that tempo. I don't know if that's something that the SWAC is doing currently or will be doing to kind of dictate the matchups, to have the most eyeballs watching, whether it's Alcorn Southern, we've been on television before, or whether it's, Grambling and Jackson State. I don't know if that's the case, but I think the conference, everybody being on television one time, tells me that the conference wants to make sure that everybody is on television at least once on the ESPN platform. And yes, the ESPN Plus, the ESPN 3, that's online. You have to pay for the subscription for it. So it's, it's something you'll have to make an investment in if you so choose. But for the rest, I think there's good matchups. The times are different, 5 o'clock times. I know we play Prairie View at 5 at our home game. It's usually at 2, so let's make some adjustments there. But look, if we're going to be on television, and that's where the money is, TV. And look, Dr. McClellan, when he was at Texas Southern, negotiated a contract to put TSU on that ATT Sportsnet. I think he said it was like $500,000, return. If we're going to get those returns financially by being on TV, in order to get something, you got to give up something. And unfortunately, for those who don't like Thursday night games, that GSU Prairie View game is a huge game, usually high scoring. I think folks will get their money's worth whether they go to the game or watch it on TV. It should be an entertaining game, a bunch of points scored, I think. We're going to have to give up something to get something. If it's a Thursday night game, if the SWAC doesn't want it, I guarantee you there are 4 or 5 other conferences that'll take it. So we need to keep that in mind.
Well, I'm sure they'll work things out. I'm just kind of looking at some of the responses, getting on the topics that we've talked about. A listener says, "Tell Mike I like his explanation on the TV deal with ESPN3 the other day. He made perfect sense to me." Talking about the good doctor, Brother Michael Prince. One listener wanted to say southern-jags state should always be on television. Now, I don't know if I can be objective, because it could be played in a bayou, a literal bayou, and in southern-jags state, eyes are going to be there, ready to fist fight, whatever, bite, kick. You know how I feel about that one. And then in-house production, as far as, does Alcorn offer, I think they do, where you can watch the games even if it's not on a big platform. I think Southern has the same thing. Are most schools going to that as well?
Yes.
Like the YouTube in-house?
Yeah, the answer to that question is yes. As far as Alcorn is concerned, the alcornsports.com site, for the home games, we use a crew, our audio plus video, so you can watch it on that platform. Of course, the rules dictate that if a game is being shown on ESPN, you can't stream that game.
Right.
But other than that, we have it. I think Valley's working on it. Bama State has it.
I want to say Southern has it in-house.
Southern has it in-house. So I think more schools are getting around to that. Now, whether ESPN decides to use that feed instead of bringing their own crew, I have heard stories of that happening for the bigger schools, especially if it's on the ESPN3 platform, in which they just basically use that network, the school's network's feed, and just kind of picks up off of that. So there's some creativity there, but it's just we have to continue to improve to get that quality and to have that online for people who can't come to the games, just to watch the games as well, because that's huge in terms of ratings, and I think that helps ESPN make some decisions. I personally don't think, Carlos, I think that Jackson Southern game, I think that game speaks for itself. That's just one of those few games in the league in which even if it is shown on television, if the weather is good, Mumford or Memorial will be packed, and especially if it's an impact game in terms of the division.
Well, a lot of interesting topics so far. And next week when we talk, we'll probably get into a little bit more of I saw after the show a lot of discussions on social media, different platforms, about when Dr. McClellan came on last week and talking about the 8 conference football schedule that's coming up, and when he talked about, example, Southern Jackson State, they roll off. They can play it as a Classic or out of conference games. That just opened up Pandora's box again. So we're literally out of time for this segment, but I'll be thinking about that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that. And, as I stated last week, I don't want to be a hypocrite, but, I didn't like those games, and I know some schools did it previously, and this is the last year of the 7-game conference schedule in football, then it goes to 8. But the discussion that I've mounted on social media is you're not going to turn down a game if Southern-Jags State plays and it's not a conference game, but it counts in overall standing, or it's a homecoming game, you put it at a homecoming, the potential of making a nice payday will outweigh them saying, no, we just won't play it. And so it's kind of been going back and forth on that one, but that was one of the bigger shockers, talking with Dr. McClellan last week, that basically said, hey, one team moves off, from another division, and it'll be a 2-year deal, not a one. So Alcorn rotates off of Southern schedule out of the East. They still have the option basically of playing. And I put in, and I didn't hear back, so Coach Banks is on the clock. He's on the clock. He's usually, maybe something came up, but we'll try again for next week, and we'll pose that question to him.
I think that those traditional big mega SWAC matchups, when the Alcorn Southerns, the Grambling Alcorns, we all know who they are. There's only a handful of them. I think those matchups will continue even if the games don't count in the 8. I just think it makes financial sense, and I think that's why Dr. McClellan, as the previous commissioner, but the previous commissioner was a little more adamant. He was kind of Dewar Sharp was in your camp. Like, I don't agree with it, but we can't stop it. If it happens, he said we're not going to stop it if they chose to play. That was in years past. But I think what Dr. McClellan is saying, hey, I'm making opportunity there, even though it's not going to count in the 8. If they choose to play and work it out, if whatever we can do as a conference to help make that happen, we're going to do that. So I think that there's a handful of matchups that'll continue even when the teams roll off each other's schedules.
Yep. Unbelievable.
You are really you're not feeling that one, are you, Carlos?
Well, I don't know how I feel sometimes. And this is one of the things I got to do. Like in Baton Rouge with the traffic, we need to do another study and see how the best way to implement this. No, you need a better system. It should have been done 20 years ago.
Well, think about this, Carlos. Just think of the amount of money. Now, look, I'm not an athletic director. You're not either. We just kind of guess in terms of how these things go. But I can pretty much say that these big matchups, especially Southern Alcorn, whether it's at Mumford or at Spinks, help dictate a pretty good chunk of the budget. Football. These big matchups, Southern Jackson, I guarantee you, Ashley Robinson and Roman Banks, when they play each other, whether the games count or not, that money is being figured in. And to take that out of the system, I think fans would be unhappy about it, because I think it's a matchup people always want to see for those who follow SWAC football. And from a monetary standpoint, it makes sense. Because it's always going to draw good numbers, regardless of whether the game counts or not. And you said how passionate you are when it comes to Southern Jackson, Southern Alcorn. I know you would love to see the game, just a matchup, even if it doesn't count. You might not agree with the minutia of how it's figured, but it's pretty obvious now. Once the teams roll off each other's schedule, either they're not going to play or they are going to play and the game doesn't count. And I think for fans, how many fans you said you're going to put it up as a poll last week. How many fans would love to see Southern Alcorn, even if the game doesn't count? What's the data on that? My guess is fans would still love to see it, because you got two marquee programs, passionate fan bases, and it's just great atmosphere in and outside the stadium that people just don't want to turn down. So, for me, I think from the money standpoint, the excitement, the energy, I think those games are going to continue. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong.
Well, no, you may not be, but that is the question that I'm going to put to Coach Banks from this end and see, hey, if you're going to do it, say it, then move on. On that note, got to take a timeout, Charles. Appreciate the time as always, and we'll speak next week.
All right, Carlos, appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to take a quick timeout. When I return, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day joins me. He's getting you ready for football season. Top SWAC running backs, top SWAC quarterbacks, top MEAC quarterbacks, top MEAC running backs. Celebration Bowl in December. Who would it be? But there's so many minor and mid-level benchmarks and major benchmarks that you got to meet and surpass. For many of the Southern fans, it's, yes, I said it, and I'm going to say it again. It's Atlanta or bust. For Alcorn, they're probably saying, do it again just one more time. That's for each year. For Prairie View A&M, we got to get into the discussion. This is our year. Jackson State, can we put a dent into Alcorn's dominance? Grambling State, just simply return to dominance. That's just my opinion on the themes. But it all starts very shortly. Take a time out. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show.
I know that as parents, we work hard to do everything right. We baby-proof our homes, put our kids in car seats, and learn what to do in an emergency. Yet most parents don't know that children could be poisoned by lead paint in their own homes. Lead poisoning causes permanent learning and behavior disorders, and the culprit is usually dust from peeling or chipping lead paint, which goes from the children's hands right into their mouths. Keep paint in good condition in your home, daycare, and other places where your children live and play. Ask your doctor to test your child for lead poisoning and get your home tested too. For more information on how to address lead paint problems safely, call 1-800-424-LEAD. This has been a public service announcement from the Open Mic Broadcast Network.
As a dad, you'll probably spend years teaching your son how to hit a baseball, how to throw a tight spiral and hit a receiver, how to spring off a diving board and hit the water, how to hit a 1-wood and a 9-iron, how to hit the bullseye, how to hit the strike zone, hit a jump shot, hit the open man, hit the hockey net, and maybe the most challenging of all, how to hit the books. But the question is this: how much time will you spend teaching him what not to hit? Teach your son early and often that all violence against women is wrong. For tips on what to say, visit endabuse.org. Brought to you by the Family Violence Prevention Fund, the Waite Institute for Violence Prevention, the Ad Council, and this station.
Welcome back to this week's episode of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Yes, we are one. Frankie Beverly Mays. They stated that so well. Will that be the theme after this show? I think it will. Remember, we are one. At the end of the day, we just like to beat each other on the athletic playing field. Speaking of athletic playing field, next guest, Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. Sir, good morning to you. Welcome back.
Man, good morning, Carlos, man. It's good to be here in fellowship with you again.
Oh, I like that.
Getting closer to that time, man. Get closer to that time.
Yeah, I like the word fellowship. Go ahead there. Maybe another calling there somewhere, huh? At least fellowship and talking about HBCU athletics, and been monitoring your articles and kind of getting everybody ready, I guess, for the 2019 football season. Best quarterbacks in the MEAC, you kind of list some, and with the SWAC. How much fun was it, and I know it was work, how much fun you had in producing these articles?
Oh, man, it's a lot of fun, man. There's a lot of research that goes into it, and you kind of uncover some gems that you didn't think about, help you hit some angles that you didn't think about. Especially I'm doing a running back series now. I just dropped the first part of that on yesterday.
Yeah.
But with the SWAC running backs, man, you'd be surprised that from a running back standpoint, there's not a lot of guys who have clipped that 1,000-yard mark per season that we've had over the last 15 years or so. A lot of guys who have had maybe 600, 700 yards, maybe add another 500 or 600 yards receiving. But as far as just having that dominant back, that pound the rock guy, we really hadn't had many of those in the conference over the last 15 or so years. So it's been interesting to kind of uncover these guys and kind of their stories and how they got to where they are now.
Yeah, I pulled up online talking about Devon Ben, who Southern University running back from a very strong John Curtis program, and he's one of the guys with 700 yards, 5.1 average yard per carry last year. What is it? Because I mean, you look at Alcorn. I know they are run oriented. Is it because of the style of play in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, or is it most schools have gone to a running back by committee situation?
I think what you'll see a lot of is been a running back by committee. And if you look at Ben's numbers from last year, he shared touches. He shared touches with backs. If you look at most of the guys in the league, they shared touches with 2 and 3 other guys. So that kind of helped keep legs fresh, but it kind of helped hurt from a production standpoint. And then you have a lot of teams, some teams who have just decided to almost abandon the run game altogether. Where they're throwing the ball, their bubble screen and their stay routes are extensions of the running game. So it's been a combination of both. We have had some passers that do pretty well, but as far as getting that 1,400, 1,200 yard rusher, haven't had that many in the conference, and I think it's a combination of both of those.
Yeah, and the impact of dual threat quarterbacks, RPOs. I'm looking at the picture right now, and you see Skelton. He's handed the ball off to Ben, but he's running behind. And those are touches, particularly with quarterbacks like that and Noah Johnson, who can take that ball out of the running back's hand and turn it upfield and, for big yardage.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you do that, that quarterback is basically another running back at that particular point because you have to key on him. If you look at a kid like Noah Johnson, I think, was third in the conference in rushing yards. He did some damage. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year. So you take into account what he did in the passing game and what he was able to do in the running game as well as Deshaun Waller did. Imagine if he had a quarterback who didn't have that running ability. You would have added more carries to his load, more yardage to his load. And then Alcorn also did hit you with 2 other backs as well. P.J. Simmons ran for over 700 yards. And then they had a young man, a freshman out of Texas, who ran the ball pretty well also. So if you look at Alcorn, they basically had a 4-headed monster as far as running the football last year.
And Brandon, if we kind of turn, and we'll come back to the Southwestern Athletic Conference, in the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, one would think basically different type of style, they tough defense and an offense. They pretty much run the football. Is that the case? And talk about their quarterbacks and their running backs.
Yeah, even from a quarterbacking standpoint, we had, of course, Kalen Newton. That's the man that's going to jump out, the reigning MEAC Offensive Player of the Year, and he's going to jump out. But we start looking at some of the other quarterbacks, Ryan Stanley at Florida A&M, who will probably end up leaving FAMU this year, being the school's all-time leading passer and racking up some school records. If you even look at them, Newton, his pass attempts are a little bit higher than Stanley's. Stanley has a running game, but if you look at just the pure numbers from a quarterbacking standpoint, the attempts per game in the MEAC are a little bit lower than what you see in the SWAC by about 5 or 6 on average. Those teams over on the East Coast, they like to play the game from the inside out. And I was talking to this with someone yesterday. As much talk as we've had about the transfer portal and how the SWAC schools have benefited and HBCUs have benefited from the transfer portal. It says a team over there on the East Coast that has been very quiet about what they've been doing in the transfer portal, because the players that they've got out of the portal aren't necessary. They're not sexy players. They're not going to grab headlines. But the defending Black College Football National Champions have gotten 6 players out of the portal, and they're all trench players. They're all interior defensive linemen and offensive linemen. And that's something, yes, it doesn't get people excited in July and in June. It doesn't make for headlines, but that's what you win with. You can have all the skill position players in the world, but if you don't have that trench play, it means nothing. So I think that's the philosophy that you're starting to see transfer over here into the SWAC conference. And you're seeing Alcorn do it up front, the way that they're able to run the ball as well.
Yeah. Visiting with Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day, and doing your research and producing these articles, you mentioned some things that you kind of surprised at. Give us one from the MEAC and maybe one from the Southwestern Athletic Conference that you were kind of surprised at when you found out some information.
The one from the SWAC that I was surprised with just kind of doing research was one that was right up under my nose, so to speak, and that was Akil Glass. He's been a kid at Alabama A&M who he's been a starter since he's been there. I know he was going back and forth his freshman year, but if you look at the numbers that he's been able to put up already in his first 2 seasons, Akil Glass is doing some special things. He led the conference in passing touchdowns. He's a big kid. We're talking about a kid that's 6'4", almost 6'5", 220 pounds. He's a prototypical quarterback, has a strong arm. I'm going to be very interested in seeing how Akil Glass develops year 2 under Connell Maynor, a guy who's known for developing great quarterbacks if you look at his track record. So it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. He was a surprise on what he's done. And also looking at them in the MEAC, we've heard the name Kalen Newton. We know what he's done. But Ryan Stanley at FAMU, much like Akil Glass, has been pretty much the starter since his freshman year. He's coming into year 4 as a starter. He's a big kid. He was known as a guy who would show his athleticism more so in his passing game. But if you see the last year, he's developed more as a passer. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in year 2 under Willie Simmons, because I think that this is a kid that has the potential to be, first team all MEAC when it comes down to the quarterback position if he can limit the mistakes. So I think those two. I think those were both quarterbacks. Those are surprising because you talk about quarterbacks in either conference, people are going to immediately bring up Noah Johnson in the SWAC and Kalen Newton in the MEAC, and sometimes people will miss out on those guys like an Akil Glass and a Ryan Stanley from FAMU.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And when I talk about Alabama A&M, every year, like Charles Edmonds, and when I ask him for this season, Alabama A&M is always the team to look out for. Watch out. This will be their year. And it just hadn't happened. Mm-hmm. Could this be the year that they finally really get so close that they represent the East, or at least really make a tremendous effort to dethrone Alcorn and Jackson State. Is this the year, you think?
I think that they can get close. It's hard for me right now to say that anybody in the East can run with Alcorn. Just looking at what Alcorn has back. Alcorn's returning Noah Johnson, Deshaun Waller, top 3 pass catchers from a year ago, Solomon Muhammad, Quintero Cole. The names go on and on. They return so much. But I will say this, as much as Alcorn plays, Alabama A&M was 9 points away a year ago. They played them well in the first half, and after a high snap and a 92-yard run by Noah Johnson, they kind of just killed the spirits. But if you look at Alabama A&M, they beat Jackson State a year ago, came from behind to beat them. They had our Southern team on the ropes, could have knocked us out in the first half, out and down in Mobile. It took a valiant effort in the second half for the Jags to win that football game. If it wasn't the key for Alabama A&M is going to be offensive line play, because that offensive line came back to bite them against Grambling, a game that everybody kind of felt Alabama A&M would win, and this would be a statement win and a win that program needed. That offensive line came back to haunt them, and that game was 14-0 off pick sixes before they got into the second quarter. As that offensive line goes, that will be the way that Alabama A&M will go. They have all the talent, but they have to shore up that offensive line. And Colin Maynard has made this clear. You have to beat Jackson State. You have to beat Alcorn. You have to beat Grambling. You have to beat Southern. You have to beat one of those teams before you can be back. And so far, Alabama A&M, they've beaten Jackson State, but they have to beat Alcorn, they have to beat Southern, they have to beat Grambling for them to say, hey, we're back, and we're going to be back in contention.
Brandon, got 3 minutes left. Quickly, they have these polls out, the too early polls, but in the West, I'll just put it simply like this: another typical dogfight in the West, and then close out with the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. Is A&T once again the team to beat?
Man, I think over in the MEAC, the team that I like is North Carolina A&T. They're loaded. I think a lot of people are going to pay attention to what they lost a year ago. They lost Lamar Renard. They lost, running back. But those receivers are back. They've shored up on the defensive line and offensive line. And the young man who takes over that quarterback position, whoever it may be, whether it's the East Carolina transfer, the fifth-year senior that they have, or a freshman that's coming up, he's going to be a talented guy. A lot of people like the freshman that wears number 1 to take over, and he's a big quarterback. He's 6'4", he's 236. He's physical. He can run it. He's bringing us another dimension. I like North Carolina A&T in the MEAC. Start talking about in the SWAC. In the West, I think it's going to come down to Southern and Grambling. I think as more things change, the more they remain the same. I like Prairie View to make some noise as well. I think we got 2 Prairie Views last year. We got Prairie View beginning of the season, and then we have Prairie View, what I like to call A.S. after Southern. They weren't the same team, So what Prairie View squad starts off this particular year? What Prairie View will we see? And then also in the East, who challenges Alcorn? Is it Jackson State? We talk about transfer portal. Jackson State might have been transfer portal U. We got some news down in Montgomery that DeAndre Francois is on campus. He got on campus on yesterday, and they're trying to get him signed, sealed, and delivered down to Montgomery. Who is going to challenge Alcorn State in the East? But overall, I like Alcorn to repeat as a champion in the East. And right now, Alcorn, to be honest, is my favorite to win the conference all over again.
Well, on that note, and I'm sure a lot of Alcorn fans are happy that are listening. Don't be so modest, Alcorn. BJ, we'll talk again real soon. Hopefully next week. Get you on a little bit early, have a little bit more time, but appreciate it as always, and enjoy yourself. Have a great weekend.
Man, appreciate you guys, man. Love coming on, man. Looking forward to it, man, and have a great weekend.
All right, thank you. Brandon B.J. Jones of HBCU Game Day. want to thank Dr. Michael Prince for producing, as always. Everyone who listened in, participated, I appreciate you so much. Say a little, keep me in your prayers. My father is not doing too well right now, and I'm about to go and look at him and check on him. So keep me in your prayers. It's the life cycle, and I appreciate everything that you guys will do for me as far as prayers and thoughts. Appreciate it. Until next Saturday morning at 10 a.m., have a great weekend, and peace and God bless.